Hello everyone, and welcome to Sunup. I'm Lyndall Stout. We begin today by getting up to speed on Oklahoma's wheat crop, along with a few management tips. Here's Sunup's Dave Deacon and our Extension small grain specialist, Dr. Amanda Silva.
Here we are in the middle of January, and Amanda, the wheat is pretty much dormant across the state, but there's actual activity going on in the wheat fields.
Yeah, so the winter has been overall very mild. We haven't had many cold days, and what I'm seeing now in the field is just a few inoculum of leaf rust that have survived through this mild winter. It's a little bit earlier than expected. When I first found last week, and I talked to Dr. Hunger, we were a little bit surprised at how early it is. But yes, it is expected for a winter like that the temperatures have not gone so low and killed the inoculum.
How does that impact different wheat varieties? Because I know that different varieties have different susceptibility to different diseases and rusts, but then it also, whenever they're planted, it could impact that too. How does that impact those?
So what I would say is that a reaction to leaf rust right now, so a variety response to infection at this juvenile stage does not reflect their response when infections occur later in the season. So a variety may have resistance, maybe resistance to leaf rust later in the season, but it could be susceptible to infections that occur now. So that's why it's very important to keep scouting, especially if producers don't know if their variety is susceptible to juvenile infections or not. And also for people to not be so surprised, because they might be growing a variety that they know to be resistant to leaf rust infections, but that could be just for later in the season and not to early infections. But as of now, it's not so severe, the rate of severity and infection in our fields.
Whenever it comes to other things producers should be doing in their wheat field, what should they be out there doing?
Well, other than scouting for those diseases, I think it's not too late for them to add their enrich strip and start making their plants for top dressing. One of our research has shown that it is very important to have that nitrogen there prior to jointing. About 20% is used by jointing, 50% by flag leaf, and 70% at heading. So it's a good strategy to have that nitrogen there when the plant is starting to put their energy to produce grain sites, which is prior to jointing, and that's when the plant will start picking up their use of nitrogen. Just
overall in wheat country across Oklahoma, how does the soil moisture profile look?
I think it's looking good. It's looking way better than we were seeing a few weeks ago in the fall, for example. But yeah, so I think most of the state really benefited from that moisture that we got in the past weeks, and overall the wheat is looking good. And if producers have good soil moisture, I think it's a good strategy to start making their plants for top dressing.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Amanda Silva, Extension Small Grain Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Speaking of top dress, Dr. Brian Arnall joins us now to talk a little more. Brian, let's start with some of the sources.
Yeah, so right now we're really moving in. We're about to hit green up, weather's looking good. And so we want to consider our sources, our primary sources for nitrogen, urea, UAN. Those are the ones we're applying the liquid and the dry. Both are good, both have their challenges. So with either one, we don't really want to go out after a rain. If we can get them on before a rain, that's perfect timing. Both sources are equal there. After rain, when we still have some soil moisture, it's going to increase losses. In those times, we want to consider urease inhibitors if the soil's a little damp or we have some humidity, and then would be looking at a rain in the 7 to 10 day forecast. That's about how long they work. It's about a week. The other thing to consider is the one-pass herbicide nitrogen versus nitrogen alone. The one-pass system can be very effective, work quite well because you get some nitrogen with the herbicide and it makes that herbicide work a little bit better. However, there's some conditions that I would suggest not to use that. So to do a one-pass system, we have to use a flat fan, so a broadcast nozzle, which is putting small particles across the field. That works great if you're in a field like we are right now, where we have a lot of bare soil and we have a lot of plant, meaning the fertilizer will get either on the plant or the bare soil. The times it doesn't work well are in no-till fields where we have a lot of residue and small plants, because that nitrogen particle will land on the residue and have potential to get tied up and not available. So in those scenarios, I really recommend to move to a two-pass system where herbicide goes on in one pass and then fertilizer in a second pass. And in a no-till scenario specifically, I want to use streamer, where we're concentrating those bands down and forcing that closer to the soil and through the residue.
So once that is figured out, how do you determine how much to put on?
So the mulch, we really want to look at soil tests. We want to look at yield goal. Where are we sitting at there? The 2 pounds of N per bushel. If you can be more efficient, you can lower that value down a little bit, get 1.7, 1.8 if you want to tweak that. But you really got to look at your yield goal. What's your historic yields? Do you have pre-plant down? Do you have soil tests to see how much residual you have? And build off of that, remembering about the 2 pounds of N per bushel. And of course the nitrogen-rich strip. If you have those out, those are an indication of when the plant needs nitrogen. And if it's not showing up right now, it doesn't need it right now. And then you can go onto our online calculator and put in the planting date and the NDVI, which you can get a green seeker from the county educators, and go to your county extension office and do that. I'd also say it's not too late. So it's already been mentioned, but it's not too late to put them out, and you could put them out without fertilizing right now. Just get a strip out there if you want to use a push spreader to apply it and just watch. Or if you're fertilizing right now, it's becoming a much more popular approach is a 3-pass nitrogen system, where we have a little bit of pre-plant. We have some right now getting up to about what you'd expect is 50 to 60% of the total need. And then using an enriched strip for that late February, early March application to see if you need more or not. So it's an ability to put on some now, get 30 to 40 pounds in the system now, put out an enriched strip on top of that, and then look at late February to see if it needs more. Then you could use our online calculator and get that nitrogen rate. The crop's not growing right now, so we get some rains, it'll get into the soil, and we have time to fertilize. A lot of our research is showing we can wait all the way to hollow stem or a little after without losing yield, so it gives us an opportunity still to put them out late.
We have a few weeks.
We have a few weeks.
Okay, Brian, good to see you. Thanks a lot.
We're getting closer and closer to the start of the spring calving season, and I think this is a good time to review what's going to take place as this cow or first calf heifer goes through the throes of the delivering of the calf. We generally talk about calving being broken down into 3 different distinct stages. We call it the 3 stages of parturition. Stage 1 takes place, and the estimates vary, from 2 to as long as 24 hours before the process of actual physical labor start for that cow as she goes into stage 2. Stage 2, of course, is the actual delivery of the calf, and we've talked in the past about stage 2 being about 1 hour in length in the case of these first calf heifers, half that long in the case of a cow that's had calves before. And stage 3 then is that stage where it's the expelling of the fetal membranes or the placenta. But what I want to do today is visit about stage 1 in a little bit more detail. As we said in the outset, stage 1 seems to vary in terms of how long it takes place. Some estimates as short as 2 hours, others as long as 24 hours. And what's happening during stage 1 is a lot of very significant hormonal changes taking place in that cow or heifer. Some of these hormonal changes maybe things that we can observe, such as behavioral change in the cow or the heifer, the one that begins to isolate herself from the rest of the herd. Perhaps she'll lay down for a little bit, get up, kick at her belly, hold her tail out. A cow or heifer that seems to act uncomfortable. Also, during stage 1, we expect that the udder has filled up and is pretty tight. Again, that is something that can occur several days prior to stage 1 taking place, or may occur just within that last 24 hours. One of the key things that's taking place in stage 1 that I think really can give us some hints that calving is imminent is due to those hormonal changes, the dilation of the cervix has to take place during stage 1. We can't see the cervix, but what we can see are the changes in the other ligaments around the pelvic area of this cow or heifer that's about to go into stage 2. Because of the hormonal changes that cause the dilation of the cervix, other ligaments will soften, and if you look closely, right before a cow or heifer goes into stage 2, you'll notice a sunken appearance around the tail head. Those ligaments that are between the tail head and the pelvic bone are softening, they're loosening, they're relaxing as it gets preparing for this process of delivering the calf. And I think that's a real good clue to look for as you're watching cows and heifers to see which ones you probably want to get up close to the barn to get ready for the calving process. I think that's one of the best tips of impending calving that I can give to you. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on Sunup's Cow-Calf Corner.
COVID-19 vaccinations are underway in Oklahoma, and some OSU Extension educators are supporting their local county health departments in this effort. Sunup's Curtis Hare takes us to Pontotoc County to learn more.
We have the COVID vaccine shots going on at our Agriplex facility today, and we wanted to do something to help out.
For the past 3 Wednesdays, the Agriplex in Pontotoc County has served as the point of dispensary for Phase 1 of the coronavirus vaccine rollout. This morning, as healthcare workers march in the building to prepare for an 8-hour shift of nonstop inoculations, Pontotoc County Extension Director Jana Kelly is making sure they are not doing that on an empty stomach.
There you go. Thank you so much. We offered to cook breakfast for the workers today, and they'll have about 130 workers and volunteers that we'll be cooking breakfast for this morning. And we've got biscuits and gravy and sausage biscuits. Now, are y'all from East Central?
Yes, ma'am.
No, I thought. Well, you know, I think Extension, we work with a community partnership. That's what it's all about. And the health department's one of our big community partners. And so when we do programs, they help us promote our programs. I think it takes all of us to help.
This is a pod, a point of dispensing. This is something we've practiced for about the last 15 years for being able to get a mass number of vaccines done in a day.
Chris Munn is a public health specialist in Stevens County and is also serving as the vaccine project manager for several counties, including Pontotoc. He says about 1,250 doses of the Pfizer vaccine will be administered today.
So the more people that receive the vaccine, the more people that are going to have that immune response, and we can get to that point where the community spread will diminish and hopefully eventually stop, hopefully empty out our hospitals, lessen the burden that they're feeling right now.
I mean, it makes me feel very proud that we're able to offer those here and that people aren't having to travel to get them or whatever. But for the most part, it's helping our community be able to get back to normal.
And for an event like this, it takes a partnership among several agencies to pull this off.
Well, there is no way we can do this without community partners. Health department staff, we're very limited on the staff that we have. Like this event takes about 90 people, county officials, the extension office.
And I think that's our job, is to give back to the community. You know, it's not about, hey, Extension's here and, you know, we want recognition for it. We don't. We want to be part of the solution.
Good breakfast gets you going, but it also makes us feel appreciated. And that's something we need. Everybody needs that, and we're very thankful for that.
As the vaccination effort goes on, the Agriplex will continue to serve as the vaccine distribution center on Wednesdays.
And even if it's something as small as serving biscuits and gravy to healthcare workers, Jana and her Extension colleagues will answer the call to help in any way they can. In Pontotoc County, I'm Curtis Hare.
Hi, Wes Lee, and welcome to the Mesonet Weather Report. Wheat is Oklahoma's largest crop. After a slow start due to dry soils, it has turned around and is looking pretty good in most of the state. Wheat tends to grow anytime the days are above 40 degrees. We have two tools at Mesonet related to monitoring this in wheat. The first is the Wheat Degree Growing Days. It gives us an idea of wheat development over time. This chart shows the degree days at 3 locations, Tipton, Watonga, and Cherokee, for the past 5 years. It assumes a planting date of October 1 and goes through January 19th. You can see that the last stack of bars for this year shows we are further along than the last 2 years, but are about 300 degree days behind 2017. The other Mesonet tool is Wheat Growth Days. This is simply a count of the number of days since planting that the temperature climbed above 40 degrees. It is a number that is needed for producers utilizing an N-rich strip and an NDVI reader, commonly referred to as green seeker. Here we see there is not a lot of difference between the years. We are currently between 70 and 90 days. The green seeker tool works best at between 97 and 112 days, likely in a couple more weeks. Now here's Gary with an outlook for the rest of the month.
Thanks, Wes, and good morning, everyone. Well, we haven't seen much in the way of rainfall, but we haven't really seen a lot of changes in the drought monitor either. So I thought we would take a look at the overall drought picture across the entire United States. Let's get right to that. When we look at the National Drought Monitor map, the first thing that comes through is that the desert Southwest is under really bad drought conditions, and not just out there in Arizona and Utah and Nevada, but all the way over into Colorado and New Mexico too, bleeding over into the far western Oklahoma Panhandle and of course out into the Texas Panhandle. And then we have some serious drought conditions in the upper Midwest region, up in Illinois, Indiana, but then also up in the northern plains, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska. So a lot of drought, but mostly across the eastern half of the United States, and in fact across really the western United States. So not much going on across the eastern half of the United States. If we go back through the last 9 days, we do still see deficits in key areas. South central Oklahoma has deficits from 2 to 4 inches, and we see those deficits in far southwest Oklahoma in Harmon County of 1.3 inches. We're still seeing warm and dry conditions in store for the southern plains as we get into the end of the month, into early February. We see increased odds of above normal temperatures and increased odds of below normal precipitation for really the entire state, but especially the western half of the state. So that would certainly not be good for any continuing drought conditions and any chances of erasing those drought conditions. But of course, spring is a crazy time in Oklahoma, and we can certainly get a lot of precipitation that wasn't expected. So that outlook does not necessarily mean that we're going to see that drought develop. We can certainly hope that we get some precipitation and alleviate some drought in the next couple of months at least. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Today I thought I'd share a little bit of information about omega-3 fatty acids. Omega-3 fatty acids are important to human physiology. However, their role in the prevention of specific diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis and heart disease is still uncertain. Omega-3 fatty acids are a type of polyunsaturated fat, which means that they have multiple double bonds in their molecular structure. There are 3 omega-3 fatty acids that are important to our health. They're commonly known as ALA, DHA, and EPA. ALA can't be synthesized by the human body and can only be obtained through our diet. However, ALA can be converted to DHA and EPA. However, the process is inefficient. In other words, it's best to get all forms of omega-3 fatty acids through our diet. It's also important to remember that some foods are better sources for particular types of omega-3 fatty acids than others. For example, the most widely available source of EPA and DHA is oily fish. Algae-based dietary supplements can also be a source of DHA for individuals that are vegetarian or are allergic to fish or just don't like the taste. Commonly available sources of ALA are nuts, seeds, and certain oils. However, oils, nuts, and seeds can also be high in calories, so it's probably best to try and eat these foods in moderation. So just a little bit of information about omega-3 fatty acids if you're curious. For more information, please visit sunup.okstate.edu or food.okstate.edu.
Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, joins us now. Kim, kick us off with what's happening in the grain markets.
Well, you know, the WASDE report came out last week, and that drove grain prices higher. So you had wheat prices, they're up around $6. Now, these are general prices, around $6, corn around $5. You got beans around $13 and sorghum around $6.60. You look at forward contracting for harvest delivery, wheat $6.20, corn $4.35. Soybeans at $11 and grain sorghum at $5, relatively good prices. We've had good price moves over the last couple of months.
You mentioned the supply and demand report. Is that the main reason behind the price increase?
I think it's a good part of that. It's showing that the supplies are going down. You look at tight stocks with wheat in the United States. The hard red winter wheat ending stocks they were 506 million bushels last year. They're projected to be 334 million this year. All U.S. wheat going down from 1 billion bushels to 836 million, both of those well below average. Look at U.S. corn going from 1.9 billion down to 1.7, again below average corn ending stocks projected. And soybeans going from 525 million bushels, you know, they were up around 900 million year before last, down to 140 million. So that's really tight soybean stocks. And we've had good demand, good export demand for wheat and for corn and beans, and China's really been buying a lot of milo.
With this happening, any concerns about price levels?
I think there are some concerns, especially with wheat, but you look at soybeans, 140 million bushels, just not many beans in the bin at the end of this. But you've got Brazil, they've got 50% of the export market. They've got a crop coming on that they'll be harvesting soon. U.S. with 36% of the export market. We got tight stocks, so that bean price should be relatively stable, may move a little higher depending on Brazil's production. You look at corn, you got 3 countries that have the biggest impact on corn exports. That's Brazil, Argentina, and Ukraine. The 3 of them, that's 53%. About 2/3 or a little more than 2/3 of that 53% in the southern hemisphere, and that corn crop's coming on down the line. If it's a big crop, then that could hit the corn prices. Wheat, you've got record world wheat production. You've got record world wheat ending stocks. You've got record world stocks to use ratio. There's a lot of wheat around the world. You look at the world's milling wheat, it's about average on ending stocks, about the same as last year, but you got lower hard red winter wheat stocks in the United States. That'll support prices, but I think wheat prices are at risk.
With all of this in mind, and this is quite a picture that you're painting for us, could prices start to decline again?
I think they could. You can get a big crop, corn crop down in Brazil and Argentina, big soybean crop in Brazil. I think corn and bean prices could go down. I don't think there's as much risk as wheat prices when you've got a big wheat supply around the world. Now, the next exportable wheat crop is the United States. So I think remain strong. However, it could back off a little bit.
With all of this in mind, what should producers do if they want to take advantage of these current prices?
I think their decisions should be based on whether or not they can sleep at night. If they're worried about forward contracting, a price, and if they're worried about prices going up and they can't sleep because they forward contract, don't forward contract. But if they're going to worry about prices going down, then forward contract. I think the decision should be based on whether or not they can sleep at night.
Which applies to a lot of things. Kim, thanks a lot. We'll see you next week.
So now that we're into the first of the year, we're starting to get a few more minutes of daylight every day. And this is the time of year that chicken enthusiasts like my wife, they get excited about possibly getting some new chicks. And the other thing that as we get more daylight hours, that those old hens that are still out there in the backyard will begin to lay again. If you're going to be purchasing some new chicks this year, I would highly recommend that you use a reputable hatchery, preferably one that's on the National Poultry Improvement Plan. This will give you at least some confidence that you won't bring some disease home that could infect your entire flock. The other nice thing about reputable hatcheries is they have the ability to vaccinate those chicks. The other thing is, if you don't have a biosecurity plan in place, you need to have one. This is our only protection against certain diseases such as avian influenza. And if you've looked at the news or heard anything about avian influenza this year, it's been a major problem in Europe and Asia. So make sure you have that biosecurity plan in place with your chickens. The last thing I'd like to talk about, and I seem to talk about this every year, is salmonella infections associated with backyard poultry. 2020 was a record year for the number of salmonella infections we had with people that had backyard chickens. Over 1,700 people were infected. 333 of those people had to be hospitalized, and one person actually died from the disease. What's really troubling is almost 25% of those cases were in children under the age of 5. Children need to be supervised when they're around chickens. You don't want to eat or drink around chickens, and you don't want to bring chickens into your house. For some more information about how to protect yourself from getting infections from your chickens, please go to sunup.okstate.edu.
That'll do it for us this week. A reminder, you can find us anytime on our website, sunup.okstate.edu, and also follow us on YouTube and social media. I'm Lyndall Stout. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, Oklahoma agriculture starts at sunup.